Okay, let's go to Greensboro, North Carolina. We have Renee. Hello. I just came across your podcast and already love it. Bam. One listen, Jason, and she's in love. You've
Love
been
it.
super helpful already, and I can't wait to watch more of your videos. I've watched some of your videos where you
Oh,
mentioned
you
setting
hear
up
that, Chris? You hear that? Hey, Chris,
videos.
I think we should
I
get back on
hear it.
YouTube. Jason, I don't like change. I don't want to do that. 2 years in a row. Finally, somehow I used my persuasive skills to convince him that it was the right thing to do. Anyway, I'm glad we're back on YouTube, Chris.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
You
that's
got
my
your
point.
victory lap. There
Yeah.
we go. Okay, so I watched some of your videos, and you mentioned setting up secondary soft conversions to feed Google more data, and I would like
Yeah.
to give this a try.
Nice.
So here's your question. What value do I set for a lead form submission and phone calls when the product is of high value? And then another addition to the question, does it actually matter what value I set for maximize conversions? And does it, does it make any difference if I set a value for that? So to restate, she wants her conversions to matter more, and she's talking about adding values to a conversion, different types of conversions, and then she's saying, well, if I do that, should I be using maximize conversions?
Can I take a shot at this, Chris? And you
Go
can
for it.
correct me if I'm wrong. So I think what she's asking about is she wants to have her hard conversions, which are called primary conversions. Let's say it's a service company trying to get leads, phone calls and lead forms. So those are the primary conversions. But she's wanting to also add soft conversions, newsletter signups, time on site, stuff like that, as secondary conversions. And to make things even better, she's wanting to add values on her conversions. And then, right? Look, Chris, I've watched some of your videos and you mentioned setting up secondary soft conversions to feed Google more data. I'd like to give this a try. What value do I set for lead form submissions and phone calls when the product value is high? Does it actually matter the value I set to maximize conversion? So let me continue here, Chris.
Okay.
The first point I want to make is if you add values to primary and secondary conversions, my take here, Chris, is that when you look up a column that includes the word all for all conversions, like all conversion value or all conversion value divided by cost, it will factor in the values that you put on both primary and secondary conversions. But when you do an automated bidding strategy like return on ad spend, target return on ad spend, which is going to look at the values of your conversions, that strategy will not look at the value of your secondary conversions because it does not even look at secondary conversions in general. It only looks at primary conversions. So before we answer the question of what values to set for lead forms and phone calls, I just wanted to point out that, yes, go ahead and set values for your newsletters and time on site and all that, and they'll show up in columns that include all conversion value, but they won't be factored into automated bidding because automated bidding only looks at primary. So it won't look at your secondary conversions in general. Therefore, it won't look at secondary conversion value. I just want to make that point. Does that make sense? And do you agree with that? That's my understanding of things.
You're right. And the one thing I don't know if Renee actually meant secondary in the strict Google Ads sense of a true secondary conversion.
I think she did because I think she's smart because number one, she's smart enough to live in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is one of the best places to live in the country. We've talked about that here before. I have a soft spot in my heart for Greensboro, Chris. The second thing is we did an episode last week that I think she's referencing or recently where we talked about primary and secondary conversions. They used to be including conversions, yes or no. Now they're called primary and secondary conversions. So if she's not familiar with that, there's a setting when you set up conversions that says, do you want this to be primary conversion or second? Do you want it to be a primary conversion or a secondary conversion? And yeah, that's that. So if you agree with that, do you want to talk about what values to set?
Yeah. So let's talk about setting values because I think that as always, I have a very strong opinion about setting values in Google Ads. And I hear a lot of people say, well, I'm going to do a $5 value or a 5. You don't set it. Maybe it's not monetary at all. It's just you put a 5
And we are talking service companies right now for lead
service
generation. Because
companies.
if it's e-commerce, you can get your revenue in there from analytics or something like that.
Yeah. We're talking strictly about lead generation. So you say, well, a phone call is worth 10 and a web form is worth 25. I think, Jason, that is the wrong way to go. Okay, let me explain why. Actually, let me explain what I would do and explain why. What I would do instead is, if a phone call is worth less than a web form, because the web form is a quote form and has all kinds of additional information, and you usually close those more often, I would put a web form at like 500 or 1,000 or something like that. And then if a phone call may not usually be worth as much because you have to push them back to the website, you then have to call them back to get, there's other points of contact, so it doesn't close as often because there's barriers. I would put that at 50% or 75% less than the web form. I want big number differences between the two.
Wow. You've never shared this with me.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, maybe not.
No one has ever done this ever.
Well, okay.
Besides you, this is a very unique way of thinking. And I hated it at first, but I get what you're saying.
And the reason is because when you look in Google Ads, as a human, we see that conversion value difference of, it might say 0.8 on one campaign or one keyword, and the other one says 0.5. And you think, not that different. But if you were to put $1,000 in, or 1,000 value and a $200 value, you'll see a difference of 1.6 and 3.9.
So if the 1.6, so let's just say you'll see a 1 and you'll see a 7. And what you're saying, I forget what you said was more valuable, phone calls or leads. Which one's more valuable?
Lead form. I'm saying lead form's more
So
valuable.
if you see a keyword getting a 7 for the return for the conversion value over cost, which is the ROAS, return on ad spend, you see a 7 there versus a 1, that's telling you that either that keyword, so one keyword gets a 7, the other one gets a 1 in terms of conversion value over cost. That's telling you that keyword that gets a 7 either gets a heck of a ton low value phone calls, which is great because it's a ton of them and you have a 7 there, or it gets a lot of lead forms compared to phone calls and you get a lot of value that way, versus the one that has a 1 return means that it's probably a lot of lower value phone calls. So let me put to you this way, Chris. I think the traditional way people look at this is when I actually get a client, not a lead or a phone call, but when I actually get a client, what is my revenue? What is my lifetime value? And then how many calls and how many forms does it take to get an actual client? And then so say if your value is $100 per client, just hypothetical number, and it takes you 5 leads, 5 phone calls to get a client, then you divide that 100 divided by 5 and the value of each lead is $20. That's the traditional way to do it. When you do that, you can get your real return on ad spend and conversion value over cost column. But Chris, what I run into a lot is people like small business owners out there go, I don't know. I don't know how many leads it takes me to get an actual sign-up client. And guess what? I don't really know the lifetime value. I just know I need some leads. And so I like, for those people, what you're talking about, putting a big difference in terms of the value of your better conversions. If they're equal value, put the equal number in there. But if one's really a lot better than other ones, you can put a huge number in there compared to the other one. If 3 times as many people close when it comes in from a lead form versus a phone call, put a 3 versus a 1. I like that because a lot of people don't know their true numbers.
And then multiply it by 1,000.
Multiplied by 1,000. Okay,
so I don't want 3 in there.
You don't want 0.3 and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I want 3,000 in there, and then 1,000 the
but
lower one.
The one thing you have to be careful with, if you're going to go down that, not the true number, but just the relative value, is I'd say you have to be very careful with the target return on ad spend automated bidding. You have to be. You basically can't do that, or you have to factor for the difference because the machine doesn't know you're using relative values. The machine's just going to see those numbers you put in there and bid accordingly. So if you do the relative
printing money, essentially,
be very, very careful with and probably don't use the return on ad spend automated bidding. Chris, you're a unique guy. That's a very unique way to think about that. Who taught you that?
I
Self-taught?
mean,
how long have you been doing this?
I don't know. I mean, I just hate what I
I
don't
know,
know.
but if you're going to put out something very, very weird like that, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that's a weird way of thinking
Unique,
about
yeah.
this. No, and weird.
And weird.
Yeah.
Unique. I prefer unique. It's less. We have one more.
Hold on, but that's a
Oh.
weird way. I mean, that's a weird way of thinking about it. But the fact that you created that and then use it to optimize sometimes, very interesting. So
Yeah, I just hate seeing decimal points, and I know in my mind I'm ignoring those decimal points. I don't realize that 0.2 difference is like massive. You know.
what I like about that one is a lot of these small business accounts, you don't really do return on ad spend data because they don't have that data.
They don't have
so
it, yeah.
then what do? You look at your conversion column and you go, hey, let's focus on our conversion and focus on our cost per conversion, cost per lead.
Yeah.
But what I like about putting a relative value, even if it's not the real value, on different types of conversions, even though they're both hard conversions and primary that get actually mean leads, is then you can get even better data when you put that conversion value over cost, and you can use that conversion value over cost column and go, yeah, this one keyword, both keywords have a $30 cost per lead, but what kind of leads am I getting? Oh, I want a bunch of lead forms. This one shows me I'm getting a bunch of lead forms without having to. You could segment out by conversion action, or you could do this very weird, unique strategy that the great Chris Schaefer does.